Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Wednesday, March 24th, and I figured it was time to do the promised history of the Umbriferum video that I've been talking about doing. What you're looking at here is the cover of the August 1980 issue, number 79 of Bumpar's Bulletin. Of course, the Journal of the was the Journal of the American Cichlid Association. Now, at the time of this photo, nobody knew what the heck this fish was, or at least before you opened the cover of the magazine and read a little bit more into it. The mid 70s to the early 80s was a time when Central American cichlids had kind of lost favor again. If you go back to my earlier video I did on the history of the red dovi, I kind of go into the first big push into Central America that excited cichlidophiles when we brought back in the mid 60s the red devils and all the other species in the Crater Lakes of Nicaragua and some of the other dovis, what have you. That caused quite a sensation, as I've already mentioned in the old video. And that kept Central American cichlids kind of at the forefront of the hobby for, maybe 5 to 10 years. By the mid 70s, cichlids had kind of drifted back to the Africans as being the most favorite for most people. Tanganyinkans, Malawis, all of the various African cichlids, Lamphrologus. All these things had become, because of their color and their smaller size and easier to get, they were very, very popular, and they still are for that matter. But at the time, the Central Americans and South Americans were really, really losing favor. There's only a few knuckleheads like me that were kind of keeping this group even alive in the hobby. So it was really nice when the Umbee came along, and that sort of rejuvenated the interest in Central and South American cichlids. And of course, the Umbee is both, since its natural habitat stretches from Panama to Colombia. And this is the bulletin that really got this thing back, or got this next phase of our hobby going and got everybody excited. So I thought what I'd do is open this thing up, and there was a couple articles. Again, the first one with this catchy headline, the America's largest cichlid. And here is a picture of a massive male Umbee. And there was a couple articles in here, one by a gentleman by the name of Tom DePiero. Tom was a hobbyist on the East Coast in New York. He was pretty well known, did a lot of the shows back there, and he bought this little fish thinking it was a dovi. And of course, you got to remember, this was back in the days, no internet. Really, communication was by letter, by tape spawning, what have you. These fish weren't nearly as well known as they are now. So Tom got this and figured he might have finally latched on a dovi. Of course, so this turned out not to be the case, but this is a very interesting article that appeared in the magazine. The more interesting article of the two, if I can get my hand to turn, was this particular article, which really got things rolling. And this was by the curator of fishes at Belle Isle Aquarium in Detroit, a guy named James Langhammer, who kind of went by the Hammer. And he had a little bit better understanding of what this fish actually was, where it came from, etc., and a lot of pictures of this fish. And I'll show you the one that really caused me my heart to skip a beat as we move along on this thing. But there was quite a few pictures of these massive fishes that he had in Belle Isle Aquarium. The next page is my favorite. This is the picture. Well, I'll let you see this one too. This is another picture of, again, a massive, massive fish. And I love the little caption above it, it says, where can a fish that probably equals or exceeds C. dovi in size hide in South American waters to have avoided detection before now? Interesting question, which, of course, nobody knew the answer to back in those days. And next here is the picture that just really is awesome. This is a photo of James Langhammer with this massive umbee that was being kept at Belle Isle Aquarium at the time. And this gives you a real good idea. As it says, admiring his mystery fish at Belle Isle Aquarium, author Hammer provides the necessary scale to show its size. Now, when I saw this, and I was in my mid-20s, I was going crazy because I already had this fish, and I had no idea it was so rare. Not only did I already have it, but I was spawning it. And I have some photos of those old days, and I had no idea what I had, but that was kind of half the fun. So it only took another few months before Paul Oisal wrote some articles figuring out what this actually was, and they finally revealed the name of the fish. When I got the thing, I got it from a store in Carson City, Nevada. My parents lived in Nevada when I was in college, and I drove down there to see them one day. And this is a photo of the original umbee male that I had back in, gosh, I'm not good at keeping track of dates, but this was late 70s. This was a contaminant fish, which came in, like most of the umbees in those days, with some Geophagus geoparis. When I got the fish, I already had dovi, so I knew it wasn't that. But again, no internet, nobody around the area that had these kinds of things. I had no idea what it was. My best guess was that it was a krausi, which was another cyclosoma species that had a big mouth and lots of bright coloration that I'd read about, and I thought maybe that's what it was. But of course, once I got that BB bulletin, I realized that I had something even rarer. So what I've got here for you guys are some pictures of the original umbee that I had. Again, this is one, and this is various stages of his life. So I don't know if this is going to be a fun video. You guys are going to have to let me know if this is something that you find interesting, or, thumbs down and don't do this again. So here's another picture of the same fish. I guess I'll put that one back over here. I'm sitting in a real bright area because I figured that would be the best way for you guys to see the fish. You can see his great markings. He was an incredible, very aggressive male umbee. And it was I just couldn't believe my luck that, I happened to go visit my parents in this little town of Carson City, Nevada. And I happened to go into a little fish store, and I happened to spot this very unusual fish, which at the time I acquired it was maybe an inch, but I could tell it was something that I'd never seen before. And to grow it out without having a clue what it was or nobody else knowing was really one of the highlights of my young hobby days. Here is another picture of the fish. My wife was a pretty good photographer, so she took these photos. I would not claim any skills in that arena. Here's another one where I believe the fish is a little older. You can see the finnage. I'm trying to adjust this thing for the light. I'll move that up there a little bit. Yeah, I guess that's as good as it's going to get. Anyway, you can see the fish's extensions and what have you. This one here is a picture. That's not going to work. Let's see if I can hold it up this way. There we go. I guess it's about as good as I can make it. This is a female, and you can see the eggs right there, which undoubtedly was one of the first spawnings of umbees in the country. I found a female of this fish a couple years later, and to be honest with you, I don't remember if I got that in Seattle or where it came from. But these pictures were this was probably late 70s, very early 80s when this happened. Let's see, and on this picture, which my finger's in the way, you can see the female at the bottom with the eggs, and there's the much bigger male lurking at the top. Another picture of them protecting their eggs and stuff. I think they were in my biggest tank, which I had at the time, probably was my 200-gallon, which was 8 feet long, a plexiglass tank, which at the time, again, was quite a big tank. They were not commercially available beyond that at that time. Here is, let's see here. It's really hard to get. I don't know if you can see. I don't know if that's worth showing or not, but there's the female again with some more of the eggs on the rocks, and you can see the male up in the top. I think this picture's a little bit better. This gives you a pretty good shot of what the male looked like at some stage of his life. It looks like he was fairly young, but he had just tremendous colors, and it was a really, really great fish. Another one of the female with the eggs. We got to spawn in these so much that my buddy Kevin was inundated with umbee fry at a fish store in Renton, Washington in probably the early 80s, along with supplying him with thousands of dovies. We were doing the same thing. When I say we, there was a couple other buddies up here, brothers, Jeff and Scott. They were friends of my nephew. They were much younger than me, but they had gotten addicted to this stuff too. And between those guys spawning and me spawning, Kevin was chock full of big Central Americans for several years. Anyway, so there's another photo of that. And here's another picture of him, as I believe he was probably a little older by then. You can see he's starting to put on some pretty good size. This guy probably lived 12 years, and he grew to close to 20. I don't think he made 20 inches, but he was in the 18 to 20 inch range. And there is another photo of him, probably similar, maybe a little younger, I'm not sure. And there's another one where he's getting a little cockier. I think you can see his gills are sort of flaring. He was pretty territorial. And when I got near the tank, or my wife got near the tank, he would definitely start flaring up. And there is another picture of him in his prime, with tremendous fin extensions and wonderful color. And I got to tell you that people just marveled at this fish when they came, because nobody had ever seen one. This was still early 80s on the West Coast, and if there was a half a dozen of these of this size on the West Coast, that would probably be about the most there could have been. By now, there was plenty of fry, though, because like I said, we had filled Kevin's store with them. And it's another picture of one of the males, or the male. And that, I believe, is the female. You can see the darker color in the dorsal fin there. It doesn't come out really well in this photo, but the standard black, darker finnage is present in this particular fish. And it was really surprising to me when they first spawned, and all of a sudden this beautiful blue fish turned this brilliant lemon yellow. It was such a surprise in those days. And this was when he was a little younger. This was a glass tank that he was living in, which was a 75. And you can see me kind of fiddling with my hand there, not my giant thumb that's holding it, but my hand and the umbees trying to bite the glass to get at my hand. And this was when he was probably 10 inches, I suppose. And then here's another photo of probably the same time where he wasn't quite biting it, but I think he was probably charging it. And then we caught this particular one when he was a little bit younger, and I snapped this photo, and he actually slammed the glass as I was doing it. And I was always pretty proud of this particular photo to catch him in action. So that's the photos I have. I've got thousands of photos, and I don't know if that's the kind of stuff you guys would be interested in, or if that's not. So I really wanted to get some feedback to what you guys thought. While I've got you here, I'm going to show you a few pictures of my original Dovai as well. Excuse me. So this is the Dovai that started it all for me. And here he is in a 55-gallon tank after I had acquired him from a little store called the Fish Factory up here in Seattle. And I can't tell you how exciting it was to find this fish in the early 1970s. It was so shy. This was a 55 that was on the ground in my basement of the house I was living in at the time. And I would literally crawl on my hands and knees up to the tank and just wait for like an hour for this fish to come out. And it was amazing. That's all I can say. So here's some more photos of that, and then I'm going to stop pretty soon. This is a picture of my noggin with the same Dovai as he's gotten a little bit older, maybe a couple years by then, but you can start to see him getting his colors and blue, and he is no longer shy. And this is him again as he's starting to get bigger. This isn't the best picture on earth, but it starts to give you a sense of his growth and what have you. And there is another one of him when he was a little bit younger, hiding out in one of the caves. This is him when he's quite a bit bigger. I'm guessing he was probably in the 20-inch range, maybe a little less than that, maybe 18-inch range when this was taken. And this is him probably in that same range. You can see him opening that giant mouth that Dovais have. Another photo of him that looks pretty much like the other one. Here's a picture I can give you for a little more scale. This was when he was mid-size. He shared his tank with one fish his entire life. This was a little blue acara that he lived with. And about that size, the blue acara was full grown. So that's about a 7-8 inch blue acara. So you can see how much bigger the Dovai is than him. I'm guessing 16 inches, something like that. It wasn't too long after I took this photo, probably within the year, that I came downstairs one day and the Dovai had gotten a little bit bigger and blue acara was gone. And here's a picture of him as he's getting a little more mature, probably pushing 8-9 years old at this point, I think. This is one of my favorite photos of him. Anne took this photo when the sun was coming up, and you can see the colors. This is a much better photo that wasn't so bleached out, so you could really see the true colors of the fish and the beautiful greens near his mouth and eyes, and then his fins and what have you. That is the original Dovai, for me anyway. I got a few more photos. I think we're going probably too long, but I'm going to do a couple other things. Some of the other ones, again, if you guys like this kind of video, let me know. I'm just going reminiscing. This is some of the old fish I had. These are the original red-based snooks I had way back when. Another fantastic fish. If I can get this one out. Here is a picture of the first big tank I ever had. This was my 200-gallon plexiglass tank that I was so proud of that I got back in the early to mid 70s. You can see a Feste in it, a Red Devil, and some of those other ones are just too hard for me to make out just what they are. Another fish that I was quite proud of back in the old days, this is a bean eye. Back when bean eyes did not exist in the hobby, I got these from the Sonora Desert Museum in Arizona back when I was publishing the Cyclosoma Power newsletter. The guy that ran the Sonora Desert Museum was one of the people that read the magazine, and he offered to send me some of these, and I was excited as heck to get them. And I distributed these to some of the other members of the Cyclosoma Power to help get these started in the hobby. Excuse me. This is a picture of the same fish at a younger age. And this is another picture of him when he's a little more mature. I just got some random photos of him. And there's another one. Bean eye is a really cool fish, but doesn't tend to do well in the hobby. It's too shy. It stresses out and bloats, and it gets going, and then in the hobby, people get excited about it, and it dies out because people have so much trouble keeping it around. And then a few years later, people get excited to try it again. So that's been going on for years. All right, a few more, and then I'm going to stop. This is a picture of my original Trimac. He was pretty good sized fish too, probably 14 inches. There's another shot of him. And a third shot of him when he was in a healthy young fella. I'll give you a couple shots of my original Jaguar. Again, these fish are all from the 1970s. There's a pretty good, that's when he was real big. You'll notice that below him is an Umbee that he is being very territorial with at the moment. And there's another picture of him with, I think, that same Umbee, and also a Fred, if I'm not mistaken, is also in the photo, as they're all kind of jockeying for space. All right, a few more. This is my original Red Devil, and he was quite a fish as well. I've got some other photos of some of the other Red Devils. This one is a different one, a very yellow one, probably the yellowest one I ever had. And there's another one of my old Red Devils that were spectacular with that big nuchal hump. And then this probably is the king of the humps here, this guy. And you can see him jostling about with a Trimac. And below that, I believe, is a Pierceye. And another picture of that same Red Devil jockeying with the Trimac. Here's another photo of I'm not sure if that's the same one, but this one had a tremendous nuchal hump. And this photo was taken in such a way that the only thing you can really see is his great yellowish coloration, and it really stands out. I think my wife took this one. All the good pictures my wife probably took. This is my first Fred. And again, back in these days, these fish were very, very hard to come by. This would have been mid to late 70s as well. Just a spectacular Fred. And here's another picture of probably the same one. I had 5 or 6 of these, so I think it was the same one. And then here is a picture of my very first Feste. I used to call this fish Brutus because when I first got it, I figured it was a male. It was only a couple years later when it laid eggs, and I realized that this was a female. Again, it's obviously a female when you view it this day and age, but back in the 70s, Festi just weren't in the hobby. Nobody had a clue what the difference between male and female coloration was in those days. So you just were kind of like the Wild West. You're just flying by the seat of your pants. And here's another picture of the same fish when it was in probably spawning behavior. You can see the great reds, the greens all over it. Here she is again. Just a spectacular fish. I used to catch various live shrimps and things up in Puget Sound and feed them to her. Little crabs and all kinds of stuff. And the last fish I'm going to show you guys is the original green terror I had, which was also spectacular. Again, these things, this was the standard green terror, not the Peruvian Stalsbergi, but this is Riviolatus. And of course, at the time, we didn't know what it was, but just a great fish. Very aggressive. It lived in a 25, I think a 29-gallon tank most of its life. I think he moved into a 55 when he was full grown. And this is a picture of that 55, I believe, when he was more mature. You can see how bright that orange tail is. And then this was him towards the end of his life when he was just, I don't know, words don't have to say. This is, look at the hump on this guy. He was not happy I was taking his picture, and you can see the tremendous coloration on this guy. Certainly one of my favorite fish. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to do it. We'll go over and take a quick look at the dove eyes and see if anything's going on with them. Before I say a fond adieu, right now looks like, well, let's see. There's the terrorist tank, red devils. Over here is that young Costa Rican guy I got going. And he's still looking good. I don't know. There's the little female, and she's over there still doing well. The yellow fellow, he doesn't want to come out right now. I don't know where he is. And I'll give you guys a quick little try to. Somebody's asked me to give them a wide range shot of the 1,000 so they can see how big the tank is, but I can't get far enough away to show you the whole thing. The best I can do is this, which is I'm about 6 feet away, and this is the tank. All right. This video is going way too long. I really appreciate your comments. Let me know if you think these kinds of videos are worthwhile, or you'd rather me not do them. Well, here he comes one last time. All right. Take care, you guys.